All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep, deep into the world of credit card interchange fees and how they impact, well, all of us, right?
Yeah.
Businesses and consumers. We've got a really interesting set of sources to dig into today.
Oh, yeah?
A Senate hearing
Oh, wow.
with testimony from, get this, Visa and Mastercard executives.
No way.
Yeah, and a small business owner as well who's actually trying to,
Navigate this crazy system.
exactly navigate the system.
Yeah.
So one of the things that immediately jumped out at me was when the Visa and Mastercard guys were talking about their profit margins.
Oh, yeah. Those are eye-popping, right?
Yeah, they're incredible.
Over 50%.
Well, over 50%.
Which, I mean, just for context, the average S&P 500 company is like 11%.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Huge.
So I'm thinking, okay, how are they managing to keep those margins so high, especially when you think about all the businesses, especially small businesses, who are really feeling the pressure of these fees?
Right. Well, that's where the whole idea of interchange fees gets really, really interesting.
Yeah, break it down for us. How do these fees actually work?
Okay, so imagine our listeners buying their morning coffee
Love it.
with their credit card.
Okay.
So you've got the merchant, that's the coffee shop.
Right.
Your bank, which issued the card.
Got it.
And then the merchant's bank, which is sometimes called the acquirer.
Okay.
So every time that card is swiped, there's this little fee, this interchange fee that gets tacked on.
So it's like the coffee shop or any business that accepts credit cards is basically paying a toll for every single transaction.
Exactly. A toll for every transaction.
And who gets that toll money?
So the merchant pays it to their bank, the acquirer.
Okay.
And then they share a piece of it with your bank, the issuer.
Got it.
It's, it's kind of a system with a lot of moving parts, but the main takeaway is that these fees, they seem small, right? But they add up really quickly.
Especially for a business.
Yeah, think about a business doing a ton of transactions.
Right, exactly.
So those small fees can become a real burden.
So how is the amount of the fee actually determined? Is it just a flat rate, or are there other things that affect it?
Not quite that simple.
Go ahead.
It actually varies. A lot of things impact it.
Like what?
The type of card.
Okay.
Debit, regular credit card, rewards card.
Okay, yeah.
How the payment's processed.
Gotcha.
But here's the really interesting part.
Okay.
The size and the bargaining power of the merchant matter too.
What do you mean?
So like a huge company, think Walmart.
Right.
They do so many transactions, they can negotiate much lower rates than, say, your local coffee shop.
Right, yeah.
And that actually reminds me of what the small business owner said in the hearing.
Oh, yeah, what was that?
He was saying that accepting Visa and Mastercard was basically essential for him.
Just for customer convenience?
Exactly. Like he needs to offer that to his customers.
Yeah.
But at the same time, those fees are eating into his profits, right?
He's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
It's a tough spot to be in.
I mean, are there any other options for businesses? I mean, are there other ways to take payments besides the, traditional credit card system?
Yeah, actually, the whole payments landscape is changing a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you've got mobile payments, digital wallets, even these buy now, pay later services.
Right.
They're all sort of becoming more popular.
Interesting.
But they all have their pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Businesses really have to think carefully about what works best for them and their customers.
So in this Senate hearing, one of the senators actually called Visa and Mastercard monopolies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said they control something like 80% of the market.
Yeah, that's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right?
Yeah, for context, like even in the U.S. grocery market, the top 4 companies only control about 40%.
Right.
And even in tech, where you've got these huge companies, you rarely see 80% market dominance.
So the credit card industry really is kind of unique.
It really stands
in terms of how much power is concentrated.
Yeah, just a few companies hold most of the cards.
So if we think about Visa and MasterCard as potential monopolies, like how does their control over the actual payment network infrastructure, how does that contribute to their dominance?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because their control over, like, the rails of the system, right?
Yeah.
Combined with all the partnerships and acquisitions they've done over the years,
Yeah.
that's created a situation where it's really hard for new competitors to even enter the market.
It's like they own the only bridge into town.
Exactly.
And they get to set the toll.
Yeah, they have a lot of leverage.
Right. And that lack of competition could be one reason why the fees stay so high.
Potentially.
Which impacts businesses and ultimately consumers.
Exactly. It all trickles down.
So we're starting to see how all these pieces are connected, right?
Yeah.
The high profit margins, the interchange fees, the potential lack of competition.
It's a complex web.
Yeah, it's all part of a bigger picture.
Definitely.
But going back to those profit margins for a second, I'm wondering, is there more to the story? Like, could there be hidden costs, stuff that wasn't really talked about in the hearing, that affects Visa and Mastercard's bottom line?
It's always worth looking deeper, right? I mean, they're definitely dominant.
Yeah.
But we should examine their arguments about security investments and operating costs.
Okay.
Are those really as substantial as they claim?
Yeah.
Is there any independent research to back that up?
Right. Good point.
And how do their costs compare to other industries that handle sensitive financial data?
Yeah, those are all really good questions.
It's about getting the full picture.
Right. We need to be a little skeptical.
A healthy dose of skepticism is always a good thing.
All right. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the impact on us, the consumers. One stat that really blew my mind from this hearing was the total amount of credit card debt in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
$1.17 trillion.
That's a crazy number.
It's hard to even fathom.
It's hard to grasp.
And the senator pointed out that the average credit card interest rate is almost 29%.
Ouch.
So when you combine that high level of debt with those super high interest rates, it can create a really difficult situation for a lot of them.
It can be really hard to get out of that cycle.
Yeah, they can get trapped in this spiral of debt.
Yeah, and it really limits their financial flexibility.
Exactly, and that brings us back to the executives' claims that they couldn't survive with more competition.
Right.
I mean, given their huge profit margins and their dominance in the market, it's tough to square those statements with their actual financial performance.
Yeah, I think we need to look closely at what they're saying.
Okay.
I mean, are they exaggerating the negative impacts of more competition? Could it be that a more competitive market would actually lead to innovation and efficiency?
And potentially lower costs for us?
Exactly.
Better services?
Yeah, it's possible.
It seems like we have more questions than answers at this point.
That's often the case with complex systems.
But that's okay, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I think we've built a good foundation for understanding the basics of what's going on here.
Yeah, we've laid the groundwork.
Let's take a little break, let all this information sink in.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and explore potential solutions and what this all means for, you, the listener.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be right back.
See you soon.
Oh, pal, I mean, on the one hand, you have these financial giants, right?
Yeah.
With incredible profit margins. But then they're also claiming that if they had more competition, they might not be able to function properly.
Right. It's like they're saying they need these massive profits to keep everything running smoothly.
It's a tough argument to swallow.
It definitely makes you think, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, are they being totally upfront with us, or is there more to the story?
Okay, so let's break it down, starting with the senator.
Okay.
He seemed particularly worried about the impact of these high interchange fees on small businesses.
Yeah, and the fact that Visa and Mastercard have so much control over the market.
Right. He basically said they're stifling competition.
And that's keeping costs high.
For everyone.
Exactly.
Businesses and consumers.
Yeah, he's basically arguing that more competition would be a good thing.
Lead to lower prices, more choices for consumers.
That's the idea.
Makes sense. But what about the executives? What was their take?
Well, they were pretty adamant that their profit margins are necessary. They said they need that money to maintain the level of service and security that they provide.
So they're basically saying, we may be making a lot of money, but it's all going back into making the system better for everyone.
Yeah, that's their story.
But, I mean, should we just take their word for it?
Not necessarily. I mean, we have to consider that they have their own interests to protect, right?
Sure, they're not exactly impartial.
And history shows that competition can actually drive innovation.
Right. Force companies to come up with better, more cost-effective solutions.
Exactly.
So maybe more competition would actually benefit everyone in the long run.
It's definitely a possibility worth considering.
Okay, so let's dig into those security investments they mentioned.
Okay.
How do we know if they're really spending as much as they claim on keeping the system secure?
Right. Is there any independent research to support that?
Yeah, and how do their security costs compare to other industries that handle sensitive financial data?
Those are all really important questions.
Yeah, I mean, security is obviously crucial, right?
Of course.
Especially in a system that processes trillions of dollars.
Absolutely. But we shouldn't just blindly accept their claims.
We need to see the evidence.
We do our own digging.
And we should apply that same critical thinking to the senator's arguments, too.
Right. I mean, more competition often leads to good things.
Lower prices, more innovation.
Yeah. But are there any potential downsides?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that.
I mean, could having a bunch of new players in the market actually fragment the system?
Lead to inconsistencies?
Potentially, yeah. Maybe security wouldn't be as strong across the board.
Or the quality of service might vary.
Exactly. So it's about finding the right balance.
Right. How do we ensure that the system is secure and reliable,
Yeah.
but also encourage competition and potentially lower costs for everyone?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, it's not easy.
There's no simple answer.
And it's something that policymakers and industry leaders are constantly struggling with.
For sure.
So I guess the question is, where does this leave us?
Yeah.
Like us, the everyday people who use credit cards. Are we just stuck with whatever the big companies and the government decide?
No, not at all. I mean, knowledge is power, right?
Okay.
The more we understand about how the system works,
Yeah.
the better choices we can make about our own finances.
So it's about educating ourselves
Exactly, and exploring different payment options when they're available.
and maybe advocating for policies that make the system more transparent and fair.
Absolutely, and being mindful of how we use our credit cards.
So it's not about being passive, it's about taking control.
Exactly. We have more agency than we realize.
I like that. It's empowering.
And it all starts with awareness
Right. Understanding the issues.
and demanding more transparency, more choice
A fairer system.
for everyone.
Okay, so we've talked about the need for critical thinking,
Yeah.
understanding the complexities of this system,
Definitely.
and realizing that we have more power than we might think.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm really curious about those alternative payment options you mentioned. Can you tell us a little more about how those actually work?
Sure, let's dive into that.
It seems like there's this whole world of payment options beyond just whipping out the old credit card.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of these alternatives that are becoming more popular? Like, how do they actually work?
Okay, so let's start with mobile payment systems.
Okay.
Like Apple Pay or Google Pay.
Yeah.
Those use something called NFC.
NFC.
Yeah, near field communication.
Okay.
Basically, it lets you make contactless payments with your phone or your smartwatch.
So instead of like handing over my card, I just tap my phone on the terminal.
Exactly. It's super quick,
I've done that before. It's pretty cool.
especially for smaller purchases.
Right.
And then you've got digital wallets like
Right.
PayPal and Venmo.
Yeah, I use those all the time.
Yeah, me too. Mostly for shopping online or splitting bills with friends.
Right, exactly.
But how are those different from using a regular credit card?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess they're both kind of linked to my bank account or credit card, right?
Yeah, but with digital wallets, there's like an extra layer of security
Oh, interesting.
because your actual card details aren't shared with the merchant.
Okay.
Instead, they use this unique token or identifier for each transaction.
So it's less risky, especially if you're not sure about giving a website your card info.
Exactly. It can help reduce fraud.
So is that the main benefit, the security? Or are there other perks to using these digital wallets?
Well, businesses often like them because the transaction fees are lower.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they can kind of bypass that whole interchange fee structure we talked about earlier.
So lower costs for businesses, more security for consumers.
Sounds good so far, right?
Yeah, it does. But you mentioned before that all these alternatives have their downsides too.
Oh, for sure.
So what are some of the challenges with these newer payment methods?
Well, one big one is just getting people to use them.
Right, adoption.
Exactly. I mean, they're getting more popular.
Yeah.
But not every business accepts them yet.
Yeah, that's true. I've run into that myself, especially with smaller shops.
Yeah, especially places that maybe haven't upgraded their technology.
And then there's always the risk of technical problems.
Oh, definitely. Like, what if your phone battery dies or you lose signal?
Or there's some weird software glitch.
Yeah, it's like you're trading convenience for reliability.
You gain speed, but you also introduce new points of failure. And then there's the whole data privacy issue.
That's a big one as more of our financial stuff moves online and onto our phones.
Right. The need for strong security measures becomes even more important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
It's been a deep dive, for sure.
We started with those interchange fees.
And all their complexities.
And now we've explored all these alternative payment systems.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but I think the key takeaway for our listeners is that we need to think critically.
Yeah, don't just accept things at face value.
We need to understand how the system works.
Question assumptions.
Explore different options.
And make informed decisions.
Absolutely. And advocate for changes that benefit everyone.
Right. We have a voice.
I gotta say, this whole conversation has really changed my perspective.
Me too.
On how this whole system works, the power dynamics, the choices we have.
It can feel overwhelming,
Sure.
but it's also empowering.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
like we're not just helpless bystanders. We can actually make a difference.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
I love that. Well said.
Mhm.
So on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into credit card interchange fees and alternative payment systems.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey.
Huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through all this.
Happy to be here.
And to our listeners, keep those brains engaged, those questions coming.
And those wallets informed.
Until next time, happy deep diving.
See ya!